In the quiet halls of the world's museums lie secrets that humanity would prefer to forget. 20 artifacts from the past have disappeared from view, been banned, or hidden from public view. Some disappeared without a trace during wars and cataclysms. Others were deliberately removed from display when their existence challenged established historical concepts. So, today we will trace the fate of these mysterious objects and try to understand what lies behind the veil of silence. Crystal skulls first appeared in European collections in the mid-19th century, sparking heated debate among archaeologists and anthropologists. These mysterious artifacts, said to be created by ancient Mesoamerican civilizations, were exact replicas of human skulls, carved from rock crystal with incredible detail. The most famous specimen was acquired by the British Museum in 1897 from a French antiquarian. The skull was astonishing in its perfection. Every anatomical detail was reproduced with surgical precision, and the surface was polished to a mirror shine. The artifact weighed over 5 kilograms, and its dimensions exactly corresponded to the parameters of an adult human. The second famous skull is associated with the British explorer Frederick Mitchell Hedges. In 1924, his daughter Anna allegedly discovered an artifact among the ruins of the Mayan city of Luban in Belize. This skull possessed even more striking characteristics. Its lower jaw was crafted as a separate piece, perfectly fitted to the main body. The indigenous peoples of Central America truly revered crystal as a sacred material. In Mayan and Aztec cosmology, the transparent stone symbolized purity of spirit and a connection with the otherworldly realm. Priests used crystal mirrors for ritual ceremonies, and rulers adorned their tiaras and scepters with them. However, archaeological excavations in the region have not yielded any evidence of the existence of crystal skulls in pre-Columbian cultures. At the end of the 20th century, museum experts conducted a detailed examination of the artifacts using electron microscopy. The results were sensational. Traces of modern diamond tools were discovered on the surface of the skulls. The manner in which the crystals were processed indicated the use of technologies that had emerged no earlier than the 19th century. Additional analysis confirmed the European origin of the raw material. Today, most crystal skulls have been removed from permanent display. The British Museum moved its specimen to storage, officially declaring it a forgery. The Mitchell Hedges skull remains in the private collection of the explorer's heirs, who continue to maintain its authenticity. The Kyungrang Museum in Paris also removed its crystal skull from its main display. The mystery of their origin reflects the broader problem of archaeological fraud in the 19th century, when Europe's growing interest in ancient civilizations spawned an entire forgery industry. Craftsmen learned to imitate ancient material processing techniques, creating artifacts capable of deceiving even seasoned researchers of the time. Sabu disk of Saqqara was one of the most enigmatic artifacts of ancient Egypt, discovered in 1936 by British Egyptologist Walter Emery. This stone object, approximately 70 centimeters in diameter, was found in the mastaba of Prince Sabu, dating to the First Dynasty, approximately 3000 BC. The disk's uniqueness lay in its unusual shape. Its central part consisted of a thin hub, from which 3 curved blades of complex aerodynamic design radiated. The surface was carefully polished, and the edges of the blades had characteristic curves reminiscent of modern propellers or turbines. The material was metasiltstone, a hard sedimentary rock that requires considerable effort to work. The tomb of Prince Sabu was located in the Saqqara necropolis, near the famous step pyramid of Pharaoh Djoser. This period of Egyptian history was characterized by rapid developments in technology and art. Craftsmen of the First Dynasty mastered complex stoneworking techniques, created exquisite ceramics, and developed the first examples of hieroglyphic writing. However, nothing similar to the Sabu disk was known in the culture of that time. The artifact's shape has generated numerous hypotheses among researchers. Some Egyptologists have suggested that the disk served as an incense burner or oil lamp stand. Others see it as a ritual wheel, symbolizing the sun's movement across the sky. A third group of scholars has proposed that the object was part of some kind of mechanism, possibly related to grain or textile processing. The disk's most intriguing feature was its striking resemblance to modern technological devices. The blades had a variable curvature, typical of hydraulic turbines and aircraft propellers. The central hub was crafted with such precision that it could be rotated around an axis. These details seemed completely out of place on a 5,000-year-old artifact. After initial examination, the Sabu disc was placed in the collection of the Cairo Museum of Egyptian Antiquities. There, it was displayed in the early Kingdom Hall alongside other finds from Saqqara. The artifact regularly attracted visitors with its unusual appearance and generated numerous questions from tour guides. Museum catalogs cautiously described it as an object of unknown purpose. In the 1970s, the disc suddenly disappeared from permanent display. Museum officials explained this decision by citing the need for restoration and re-evaluation of the artifact. However, access to the object by independent researchers was completely cut off. Requests to study the disc were formally denied under various pretexts. Today, the whereabouts of the Sabu disc remain unknown. Some sources claim the artifact is kept in the Cairo Museum's restricted collections, while others suggest it has been moved to private collections. The lack of detailed photographs and precise measurements makes a modern scientific examination of this enigmatic object impossible, leaving its secret forever lost in the sands of time. The iron blade from the Great Pyramid of Giza was recovered from the ancient wonder of the world in 1872 by British researchers Wayneman Dixon and James Grant. This small metal fragment, approximately 13 centimeters long, has become one of the most controversial artifacts of ancient Egypt, challenging established ideas about Bronze Age technology. The discovery was made in the southern ventilation shaft of the Queen's Chamber, approximately 60 meters above the base of the pyramid. The narrow channel, measuring 20 by 20 centimeters, had long been considered inaccessible to exploration. Dixon managed to penetrate the shaft using specially crafted tools and discovered three mysterious objects: an iron blade, a copper hook, and a granite ball. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built around 2580 BC, during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom. This period was characterized by the highest levels of architectural and engineering development, but iron remained a virtually unknown material. Egyptians of that era worked with copper, bronze, and gold, but ironwork only appeared in the Nile Valley in the 1st millennium BC. A chemical analysis of the blade, conducted at the end of the 20th century, revealed the alloy's unusual composition. The nickel content exceeded 7%, characteristic of meteoric iron. Such a concentration is rare in terrestrial ores, but is typical of celestial bodies. The ancient Egyptians were indeed aware of meteorite falls and considered celestial iron a sacred material, calling it the metal of the gods. The shape of the object also raised questions among researchers. The blade bore characteristic signs of deliberate processing: a sharpened edge, a tang tapering toward the handle, and traces of forging. This indicated advanced metalworking skills, which, according to the official chronology, did not yet exist during the pyramid's construction period. Perhaps the craftsmen of the 4th dynasty possessed secret ironworking techniques. The context of the find added further significance to the artifact. The pyramid's ventilation shafts served not only practical, but also religious purposes. They were aligned with specific stars and constellations that played an important role in Egyptian cosmology. The placement of the iron blade in this sacred space indicated its ritual function, possibly related to the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. Following initial examination, the blade entered the collection of the British Museum in London, where it was displayed in the Egyptian Hall. However, interest in the artifact gradually waned, and it was moved to storage. In the mid-20th century, the object was temporarily loaned to the University of Manchester for study, but its trace was subsequently lost in the museum's records. Modern researchers' attempts to gain access to the iron blade for further analysis have encountered bureaucratic obstacles. Museum catalogs contain contradictory information about its whereabouts, and requests for the possibility of studying the artifact remain unanswered. This silence only deepens the mystery of this ancient object, which could shed light on previously unknown chapters of metallurgy and open new chapters in our understanding of the technological achievements of our ancestors. The iron blade from the Pyramid of Cheops became one of the most controversial archaeological finds of the 19th century, challenging established ideas about ancient Egyptian technology. The blade was a thin iron plate, approximately 13 centimeters long, heavily corroded. Despite the ravages of time, the shape of the object clearly indicated its handcrafted origin. Some edges were sharpened, Others thickened for attachment to a wooden or bone handle. The metal contained characteristic nickel impurities, indicating the high quality of ancient smelting. The discovery was sensational for several reasons. The Great Pyramid was built in the 26th century BC, during the Copper Age of Egyptian civilization. Iron tools only became widespread in the Nile Valley in the 7th century BC, nearly 2 millennia after the pyramid's construction. This meant that the ancient builders possessed technologies that mainstream science attributed to much later periods. The shaft in which the blade was discovered was a narrow channel, 20 by 20 centimeters in cross-section, extending for several dozen meters through the stonework. These mysterious passages were oriented precisely to the cardinal directions and presumably served ritual functions related to the pharaoh's soul's journey to the afterlife. Along with the blade, archaeologists recovered a copper hook and a stone ball, objects whose purpose also remains unclear. In addition to iron and nickel, the blade contained traces of cobalt, an element characteristic of meteoric iron. This discovery gave rise to the hypothesis that the ancient Egyptians may have used metal bodies that fell from the sky to craft sacred objects. Hieroglyphic texts indeed contain a term that can be translated as heavenly iron. Modern meteorite research confirms the possibility of such uses for cosmic material. Iron-nickel meteorites contain metal of exceptional purity, requiring no complex metallurgical processing. They can be worked using cold forging techniques available to Copper Age craftsmen. Several similar artifacts have been found in the tombs of Egyptian pharaohs of later dynasties. However, skeptics have put forward alternative theories about the find's origin. Some researchers suggest that the iron object could have entered the pyramid much later than its construction, through cracks in the masonry, or during the medieval excavation of the tomb. Others question the accuracy of the original recording of the blade's location, citing shortcomings in 19th century archaeological methodology. And since the artifact was handed over for research and its analysis results were classified, it is now impossible to see the blade with one's own eyes. So the mystery of the iron from the Cheops pyramid remains unsolved, leaving historians with only contradictory evidence about the technological achievements of antiquity. The Ark of the Covenant represents one of the greatest archaeological mysteries associated with the biblical history and fate of ancient Israel. According to sacred texts, this golden chest contained the stone tablets with the 10 Commandments given to Moses on Mount Sinai in the 13th century BCE. After the destruction of the First Temple by the Babylonians in 586 BCE, the Ark disappeared without a trace. The biblical description of the Ark is recorded in detail in the book of Exodus. Its acacia wood frame was covered with pure gold inside and out. It was 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high, corresponding to approximately 115 centimeters by 70 centimeters. The top was crowned with a golden lid with 2 cherubim, their wings spread over the sacred contents. The Ark played a central role in the religious life of the ancient Israelites. It accompanied the people during their 40-year wanderings in the desert, preceded their armies into battle, and was finally placed in the Holy of Holies of the Temple in Jerusalem. The high priest could approach it only once a year, on the Day of Atonement, performing special rituals. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims that the original Ark of the Covenant is kept in the city of Axum, in the Church of St. Mary of Zion, according to Ethiopian tradition, recorded in the medieval text Kebra. According to Nagast, the Ark was transported to Ethiopia by Menelik I, son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba in the 10th century BC. This legend became the basis for the dynastic claims of the Ethiopian emperors. Archaeological evidence confirms ancient ties between Ethiopia and the Jewish world. Remains of ancient buildings dating back to the 1st millennium BCE have been discovered in the Axum region. Monumental steles and palace complexes attest to the existence of a sophisticated civilization, capable of long-distance trade and diplomatic contacts. The local community of Ethiopian Jews, the Falasha, preserved unique religious traditions. The modern church in Axum was built in the 17th century on the site of an older sanctuary. In its center is a small chapel, accessible only to one custodian, appointed for life. According to tradition, this person never leaves the temple grounds and is responsible for the safekeeping of the sacred object. No one else is allowed even near the supposed Ark. Attempts at an independent examination of the Aksumite relic have been consistently rejected by church authorities. Ethiopian priests cite religious prohibitions and the dangers of violating ancient taboos. Rare descriptions by eyewitnesses granted permission to enter the chapel speak of a wooden box covered with cloth, but detailed information is lacking. The scientific community views the Ethiopian claims with cautious skepticism. The lack of documentary evidence of the Ark's movement in ancient times and the impossibility of archaeological research make verification impossible. Nevertheless, centuries-old tradition and the deep faith of the local population keep this mystery alive, turning Aksum into a pilgrimage site for biblical relic seekers from around the world. The Book of Thoth was considered the most dangerous and powerful magical text in ancient Egypt, supposedly containing the secret knowledge of the god of wisdom and writing. According to the Chester Beatty Papyrus, dating from the New Kingdom, this book was written by Thoth himself and contained spells of incredible power. Priests warned that reading it could bring both unlimited power and inevitable death. The cult of Thoth flourished in ancient Egypt for 3 millennia. This ibis-headed god was considered the patron of scribes, judges, and magicians, the lord of time, and the guardian of divine secrets. The main center of his worship was the city of Hermopolis in Middle Egypt, home to a majestic temple containing a vast library. It was there, according to legend, that the original text of the Forbidden Book was kept. Egyptian sources contain numerous warnings about the mortal danger of the Book of Thoth. The Westcar Papyrus tells the story of Prince Setna, who dared to read the sacred text and incurred a curse. A demotic text from Memphis describes the death of an entire priestly family who dared to study forbidden spells. These legends created an aura of mystical terror around the legendary manuscript. Actual traces of such texts are found in Egyptian tombs from the Hellenistic period. Archaeologists have found papyri containing magical formulas attributed to Thoth in the tombs of priests and aristocrats. These documents contain complex ritual instructions, astrological calculations, and spells for travel to the afterlife. However, none of the discovered texts match the descriptions of the legendary book. The most intriguing discoveries come from excavations at Tun el Gebel, the necropolis of ancient Hermopolis. In the 1930s, a German expedition discovered an underground gallery there containing mummified ibises, the sacred birds of Thoth. Among the funerary offerings were papyrus scrolls in Demotic and Greek, containing fragments of Hermetic texts. Some of these documents were transferred to the Berlin Egyptian Museum, but part of the collection disappeared during World War II. A post-war inventory revealed the loss of several key papyri, including a fragment that German researchers tentatively identified as a possible part of the Book of Thoth. The documents may have been destroyed by bombing or removed by unknown persons. Modern Hermetic traditions continue to cite the existence of the complete text of the Book of Thoth. 19th and 20th century occultists have created numerous reconstructions of its supposed contents based on disparate ancient sources. However, these works represent creative interpretations rather than scholarly reconstructions of the ancient text. The search for the authentic Book of Thoth is complicated by the fact that many Egyptian papyri remain undeciphered and unpublished. Thousands of documents await study in the vaults of the world's largest museums. Perhaps hidden among them are fragments of the very text the ancient Egyptians considered too dangerous for ordinary mortals. The mystery remains unsolved, shrouded in the silence of centuries and the fear of forbidden knowledge. Voynich manuscript is one of the most enigmatic texts in human history, written in an unknown language with unidentified symbols in the early 15th century. This illuminated manuscript, consisting of 240 parchment pages, was long kept in private collections before coming to the attention of the scholarly community. Today it resides in the Beinecke Library at Yale University, but access to it is strictly restricted. The first documented mentions of the manuscript date back to the late 16th century, when it was in the collection of Emperor Rudolf II in Prague. This monarch was renowned for his interest in the occult sciences and amassed one of the richest collections of alchemical and astrological texts. After the fall of the Habsburg dynasty, the manuscript passed to the Jesuits and then ended up in the order's Roman college. In 1912, the antiquarian Wilfrid Voynich acquired the manuscript at a sale of Jesuit property at the Italian Villa Mondragone. Voynich immediately recognized the uniqueness of the find and began showing it to leading cryptographers and linguists in Europe and America. However, all attempts to decipher the text proved unsuccessful, which only heightened interest in the mysterious document. The manuscript contains detailed illustrations of plants, astronomical diagrams, anatomical diagrams, and complex alchemical apparatus. The botanical sections depict unknown species of flora with fantastic root systems and unusual fruits. The astronomical pages show constellations and planetary cycles that do not correspond to traditional European or Arabic systems. Biological diagrams depict female figures in mysterious vessels and tubes. Radiocarbon dating of the parchment, conducted in 2009, confirmed the manuscript's date to the early 15th century. Ink analysis revealed the use of materials typical of medieval scriptoria. However, statistical analysis of the text revealed structures not characteristic of any known language of the period. The frequency of symbols and their combinations suggest either an artificial language or a complex encryption system. 21st century computer methods have also failed to decipher the code. Machine learning algorithms capable of cracking historical ciphers prove powerless against the Voynich text. Some researchers have suggested that the manuscript is a hoax created to deceive collectors. Others believe it is the product of a mental disorder or religious ecstasy. Parallel to the Voynich manuscript, there are other undeciphered texts to which access is also restricted. The Codex Seraphinus, created by an Italian artist in the 20th century, exhibits a similar structure of fantastical language and imagery. Some medieval alchemical manuscripts in private collections remain inaccessible for study due to the owner's demands for confidentiality. The Vatican Apostolic Library contains a wealth of encrypted documents, many of which have never been published. Medieval cryptograms, diplomatic ciphers, and occult texts rest in secret collections, inaccessible even to serious researchers. Official requests to study such materials are often denied under the pretext of protecting cultural heritage or security concerns, leaving many intellectual mysteries of the past forever hidden from humanity. The Antikythera mechanism was recovered by Greek pearl divers from an ancient shipwreck off the coast of Antikythera Island in 1901. This bronze artifact, dating to the 1st century BC, was revealed to be a sophisticated astronomical computing device, the technological level of which was unparalleled in the ancient world. However, a significant portion of the mechanism has been lost, and the fate of the missing fragments remains a mystery. The sunken vessel was a veritable treasure trove of ancient art and science. In addition to the mechanism, archaeologists recovered marble statues, bronze sculptures, ceramic vessels, and jewelry. The cargo revealed trade links between the Greek islands, Asia Minor, and Rome during the Hellenistic Wars. The ship likely carried luxury goods and scientific instruments for the Roman aristocracy. The initial finds arrived at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, where they remained neglected for a long time. It wasn't until the 1950s that British physicist Derek de Solla Price conducted a detailed study of the corroded bronze fragments. X-rays revealed a complex system of interconnected gears, dials, and pointers. A reconstruction of the mechanism revealed its astonishing complexity. The device contained no fewer than 37 bronze gears of varying diameters, connected in differential gears. The front and rear panels were covered with ancient Greek inscriptions containing operating instructions and astronomical data. The mechanism could predict the positions of the sun, moon, and planets decades in advance. Modern research using computed tomography has revealed even more astonishing details. The device accounted for the irregularities of the lunar orbit, predicted solar and lunar eclipses, and tracked the 4-year cycles of the Olympic Games. The level of mathematical and engineering knowledge embodied in the mechanism was considered unattainable in antiquity and only appeared in Europe in the 14th century. However, the surviving fragments are only a third of the device's original size. Seawater and time have destroyed a significant portion of the bronze components, leaving many unanswered questions. Researchers speculate that additional dials existed to display the movements of the planets Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The mechanism may have had even more complex functions than has been ascertained. The search for missing pieces continued at the shipwreck site throughout the 20th century. French explorer Jacques Cousteau organized several expeditions to Antikythera, but discovered only small fragments of bronze of unknown origin. The seabed was thoroughly surveyed with metal detectors and underwater robots, but no significant finds were made. There is a theory that part of the mechanism was secretly removed by the first explorers and found its way into private collections. In the early 20th century, archaeological oversight was less strict, and valuable artifacts often disappeared from official excavations. Several antique dealers offered bronze gears on the black market, purportedly from Antikythera, but their authenticity was impossible to verify. Today, the lost fragments of this ancient computer may remain a mystery forever. Their restoration would allow us to fully understand the operating principles of this unique device, and, perhaps, rethink our understanding of the technological achievements of the ancient world. Chinese alchemical mirrors were mysterious bronze discs created by artisans of the Han and Tang dynasties using secret technologies lost in the Middle Ages. Known as magic mirrors or translucent mirrors, these artifacts possess the ability to project hidden images under specific lighting conditions. Chinese alchemists ascribed mystical properties to them and warned of the deadly danger of their improper use. The technology for making magic mirrors reached its peak during the Tang dynasty in the 7th to 10th centuries AD. Bronze discs, 10 to 30 centimeters in diameter, had a highly polished reflective surface on one side and relief patterns on the other. When sunlight hit the mirrored side, the reflection reproduced the pattern on the reverse side, as if the metal had become transparent. The secret of this optical effect lay in microscopic variations in the thickness of the mirror surface. Craftsmen achieved uneven stress on the metal during casting and polishing, creating bulges and depressions invisible to the eye. These minute deviations from the plane, measured in fractions of a millimeter, altered the direction of the reflected rays and formed a projection of the latent image. Chinese alchemical treatises warned that some mirrors could harm the observer. Song dynasty texts described cases of sudden blindness and mental derangement in people who gazed too long at magical reflections. Taoist magicians claimed that particularly powerful mirrors could capture the human soul and trap it in a metal cage. Mirrors depicting dragons and mythical creatures, crafted for the imperial court, were considered the most dangerous. According to Ming Dynasty chronicles, the Wanli Emperor ordered the destruction of a collection of such artifacts after a court astronomer died in convulsions while attempting to decipher a message projected by an ancient mirror. The remaining copies were sealed in secret vaults of the Forbidden City. 17th century European missionaries reported demonstrations of magic mirrors in Chinese temples. The Jesuit Matteo Ricci described a mirror that, by moonlight, revealed a map of the starry sky, and, by sunlight, a diagram of the human body. However, attempts to export such artifacts from China were invariably thwarted by local authorities, who considered them state secrets. The technology for making magic mirrors was finally lost during the Mongol invasion of the 13th century. Workshops in Luoyang and Chang'an were destroyed, and the secret alloy recipes and processing methods perished along with their custodians. Attempts by later Chinese artisans to reproduce the ancient techniques proved unsuccessful. Surviving examples of magic mirrors are extremely rare and are found primarily in private collections. Several museum specimens in Beijing and Tokyo exhibit the optical effect, but access to them is restricted. Modern attempts at scientific analysis have been met with the reluctance of owners to permit invasive research methods. The legend of a deadly reflection lives on in Chinese folklore. Antique collectors tell stories of mirrors that bring misfortune to their owners. Perhaps these superstitions are based on the real properties of ancient alloys or optical effects that can have a negative impact on the human psyche. The Spear of Destiny, also known as the Spear of Longinus, is considered one of the most important Christian relics, the very tip with which a Roman centurion pierced the ribs of the crucified Christ. For centuries, this artifact has been at the center of religious and political intrigue, and its possession has ascribed divine power to rulers. Since the end of World War II, the authenticity of all known specimens has been greatly questioned. The first historical references to the Holy Lance date back to the 4th century, when Emperor Constantine the Great included it in the imperial regalia of Byzantium. Byzantine chronicles describe the lance as an iron tip on a wooden shaft, decorated with gold plates bearing Greek inscriptions. The relic was kept in Hagia Sophia and was brought out only during the most important coronation ceremonies. In the 10th century, Emperor Constantine Porphyrogenitus presented the spear to the German king Henry I, strengthening the political alliance between Byzantium and the Holy Roman Empire. From that moment on, possession of the spear became a symbol of imperial power in Europe. Otto the Great, Frederick Barbarossa, and other rulers considered it a guarantee of their military victories and divine protection. The spear remained for centuries in the Habsburg treasury in Vienna, where it was studied by theologians and historians. In the 19th century, Austrian researchers conducted the first scientific analysis of the relic. Metallographic analysis revealed that the spearhead was forged in the early Middle Ages, not the Roman era. Furthermore, a nail was found embedded in the center of the blade, which local tradition believed to be one of the crucifixion nails. In March 1938, immediately after the Anschluss of Austria, Adolf Hitler personally arrived in Vienna to inspect the imperial regalia. Nazi ideologists, fascinated by occult theories, attached particular importance to the possession of ancient artifacts of power. The Spear of Destiny was ceremoniously transported to Nuremberg and placed in a specially constructed vault beneath St. Catherine's Church. German scientists conducted secret research on the spear, attempting to substantiate its magical properties using pseudoscientific methods. The experiments included spectral analysis of the metal, studies of its radioactivity, and even attempts to detect traces of human blood. The results of these studies remained classified and were possibly destroyed at the end of the war. On April 30th, 1945, the day Hitler committed suicide, American troops captured Nuremberg and discovered a cache of regalia. General George Patton personally witnessed the opening of the underground vault. However, the spear found there differed significantly from pre-war photographs of the Viennese original. It had a different tip and different decorative elements. Post-war forensic analysis revealed that Nuremberg held a masterful replica crafted by German artisans. The fate of the original spear remains unknown. It may have been secretly smuggled out in the final days of the war, or hidden in one of the many Nazi hiding places. Some researchers speculate that the relic may have been transported to South America along with other treasures of the Third Reich. Today, the Hofburg displays a spear officially considered the original, but modern analysis confirms its medieval origins. The true fate of this ancient relic, if it ever existed, was lost in the chaos of war, leaving only legends of mystical power and the curse that befalls those who lose the sacred spear. The Gospel of Judas is one of the most controversial early Christian texts, discovered in the Egyptian desert in the second half of the 20th century. This Coptic language papyrus codex presents an alternative version of the events of Holy Week, in which Judas Iscariot is portrayed not as a traitor, but as the chosen disciple who fulfilled divine will. The story of its discovery, disappearance, and rediscovery reflects the complex fate of many archaeological artifacts. The manuscript was discovered in 1970 by Egyptian farmers in a limestone cave near the city of El Minya in Middle Egypt. This region is renowned for its wealth of Coptic manuscripts, hidden by Christian monks during the Arab conquest of the 7th century. The papyrus was part of a codex that also contained the Epistle of Peter to Philip and the first revelation of James. Carbon dating of the parchment places it between the 2nd and 4th centuries CE, making it contemporary with the other Gnostic Gospels from Nag Hammadi. The text is a Coptic translation of an earlier Greek original, likely created by Gnostic communities in Egypt. The paleographic features of the script correspond to the traditions of Coptic scriptoria of the 3rd and 4th centuries. After its discovery, the manuscript fell into the hands of Cairo antiquities dealers, who offered it to various museums and private collectors. The document's high price and dubious provenance discouraged potential buyers. For many years, the papyrus was stored in unsuitable conditions, which led to severe damage to the text. Frequent movements and attempted sales further deteriorated the ancient material. In the 1980s, a Swiss dealer acquired the manuscript and placed it in a New York bank vault. There, it lay for over 2 decades, virtually inaccessible to study. Only occasional mentions in auction house catalogs attested to the existence of the mysterious text. The scholarly community was virtually deprived of the opportunity to study this important source on early Christianity. The situation changed in the early 2000s when the Makina Foundation for Ancient Art, through the National Geographic Society, acquired the manuscript for study. An international team of Coptologists, paleographers, and early Christian scholars began the painstaking work of restoring and translating the fragmented text. The Gospel of Judas's content proved revolutionary for understanding Gnostic Christianity. The text presents Judas as the only disciple who understood the true nature of Christ. According to this version, Jesus himself asks Judas to betray him in order to free the divine spirit from the material prison of the body. This interpretation fundamentally contradicted the Orthodox Christian tradition. The translation's publication in 2006 sparked heated debate among theologians and historians. The Vatican officially condemned attempts to revise the gospel history based on heretical texts. Some researchers questioned the manuscript's authenticity, suggesting the possibility of modern forgery. Debates about the document's dating and origins continue to this day. Today, the original Gospel of Judas is preserved in climate-controlled conditions, but access to it is extremely limited. Many fragments of the text remain illegible due to damage sustained over years of careless storage. Information that could have shed further light on the diversity of early Christian beliefs and their struggle for spiritual truth may be lost forever. The head of John the Baptist became one of the most venerated Christian relics, giving rise to numerous claims of authenticity throughout the medieval world. Following the martyrdom of the Baptist in the fortress of Machaerus around 30 AD, his remains acquired exceptional religious significance. However, by the end of the Middle Ages, historians counted more than a dozen sites claiming to possess the authentic head of the saint. Byzantine sources from the 4th century report the first discovery of the head of John the Baptist in Jerusalem. According to church tradition, one of the disciples secretly took the severed head and buried it on the Mount of Olives. Centuries later, pious Christians allegedly discovered the relic and brought it to Constantinople. There, it was kept in the Church of St. John the Baptist until the city was captured by the Crusaders in 1204. The most famous relic is considered to be from the French city of Amiens, where it arrived after the Fourth Crusade. Canon Vallon de Sarton brought the supposed head of the saint back from the sack of Constantinople. Amiens Cathedral became a site of mass pilgrimage, and local church authorities compiled detailed descriptions of the relic. They claimed that the state of preservation of the remains indicated their miraculous nature. Silvestro in Capite in Rome made similar claims. The Roman community claimed a more ancient origin for its relic, citing 5th century documents. According to this version, the head was secretly smuggled from Palestine during the iconoclastic persecutions. The papal curia cautiously supported the Roman claim, unwilling to challenge the French assertions. The Muslim world also claimed possession of the head of John the Baptist, revered in Islam as the prophet Yahya. The Umayyad Mosque in Damascus contained a richly decorated reliquary containing the supposed remains. Arab chronicles trace the relic's origin to the conquest of Syria in the 7th century. Local authorities claimed that Christians voluntarily handed over the relic to the new rulers for safekeeping. The Cathedral of Genoa possessed its own version of the head, supposedly captured during the campaigns against the Saracens. Genoese merchants, active in the Levant, may have acquired such a relic from Eastern Christians. Local tradition emphasized the head's special miraculous properties, attracting pilgrims from various parts of Italy. The Orthodox monasteries of Mount Athos also claimed the authentic head of the Baptist. The Dionysiou monastery held the relic, supposedly rescued from Constantinople after the Ottoman conquest of 1453. The Athonite monks cited an unbroken tradition of veneration dating back to the Byzantine period. They asserted that all Western claims were based on forgeries. Scientific research in the 19th and 20th centuries cast doubt on the authenticity of all known relics. Anthropological analyses revealed significant differences in the age, race, and time of death of the supposed remains. Some skulls belonged to women, others to people who lived in the Middle Ages. Radiocarbon dating confirmed the later origin of most of the samples. The Amiens relic underwent its most thorough examination in 1958. French anthropologists determined that the skull belonged to a Mediterranean male who lived in the 1st century AD. This data didn't contradict the skull's possible authenticity, but it also couldn't prove it. Church authorities halted further research, citing the need to preserve the reverence of the faithful. Today, various claims to possess the authentic head of John the Baptist coexist in an atmosphere of diplomatic silence. No church organization is prepared to publicly acknowledge the erroneous nature of their claims, preferring to emphasize the spiritual rather than historical significance of the relics. A Cairo ashtray became the subject of archaeological controversy after its accidental discovery in the private collection of an Egyptian antiquities dealer in the 1970s. This small stone object, used by its owner for smoking for many years, was, upon detailed examination, revealed to be an ancient artifact with inscriptions and reliefs that challenged established notions about the chronology of ancient civilizations. Its subsequent fate became the subject of a behind-the-scenes battle between museums and private collectors. The artifact was a flat stone disc, approximately 15 centimeters in diameter, crafted from gray basalt typical of the Aswan quarries. The central portion was recessed for ash, and the edges were decorated with finely engraved symbols and images. At first glance, the hieroglyphs appeared typical of the New Kingdom period, but detailed analysis revealed anachronisms and inconsistencies with canonical Egyptian iconography. The most problematic element was a depiction of a chariot with metal spokes, dated by stylistic features to the Middle Kingdom, a period when such technologies were not yet known in the Nile Valley. Nearby were hieroglyphs describing metallurgical processes using terminology that emerged significantly later than the artifact's supposed creation. These details contradicted the academic chronology of Egyptian technological development. The ashtray's owner, Cairo merchant Mohammed al-Sayed, claimed to have acquired the item from Bedouins in the late 1960s. He claimed the find came from a looted tomb in the Saqqara area, where locals regularly conducted illegal excavations. The lack of archaeological context made dating and attribution extremely difficult, but did not rule out the artifact's authenticity. The first researcher to notice the object's anomalous features was German Egyptologist Professor Klaus Zimmermann. During a visit to Cairo, he accidentally noticed an unusual ashtray in the home of an Egyptian colleague and requested permission to examine it in detail. A preliminary analysis of the carving and patina of the stone confirmed the artifact's ancient origin, but raised serious questions about the accuracy of modern Egyptian chronology. Zimmermann published a brief note about the find in a specialized German journal, sparking a heated debate among Egyptologists. Conservative scholars rejected the possibility of revising the chronology based on a single find of dubious origin. Proponents of revisionist theories, on the contrary, saw the ashtray as confirmation of their hypotheses about the earlier development of technology in the ancient world. International interest in the artifact attracted the attention of Egyptian authorities, who demanded that it be transferred to the state collection as a national cultural treasure. Al-Sayed initially agreed to sell it to the Cairo Museum, but then suddenly changed his mind, claiming the ashtray had been stolen by unknown individuals. A police investigation yielded no results, and the dealer soon left Egypt. Rumors of a mysterious artifact appearing on the international antiques market circulated throughout the 1980s. Several European dealers claimed to have been offered a stone ashtray bearing unusual Egyptian inscriptions. However, the authenticity of these reports was impossible to verify, as none of the potential buyers decided to purchase the controversial item. Today, the whereabouts of the Cairo ashtray remain unknown. It may be in a private collection whose owner prefers to remain anonymous due to the artifact's dubious origins, or perhaps the item was destroyed by the dealer himself, fearing an international scandal. Either way, the disappearance of this small stone disc has deprived science of the opportunity to solve a mystery that could change our understanding of ancient Egyptian civilization. Archimedes' technologies disappeared from historical records after the destruction of the Library of Alexandria, leaving only fragmentary references to the revolutionary inventions of the great Syracusan scholar. Archimedes of Syracuse, who lived in the 3rd century BC, created not only the theoretical foundations of mechanics and hydrostatics, but also practical devices that surpassed the technological level of his time. Many of his drawings and descriptions of machines were lost forever, taking with them the secrets of ancient engineering. Archimedes' most famous military invention was the burning mirrors used in the defense of Syracuse against the Roman fleet in 214 BC. The Byzantine historian Procopius of Caesarea described a system of bronze mirrors that focused the sun's rays on enemy ships from a distance of several stords. Modern experiments have confirmed the feasibility of such technology, but the exact design of the mirrors remains a mystery. Archimedes' screw for lifting water became the only invention of the scientist to survive in practical use. However, the original drawings of the spiral mechanism have not survived, and modern reconstructions are based on later Roman and Arabic sources. It is possible that Archimedes' original design contained improvements that significantly increased the efficiency of the water lifting device. The Roman writer Plutarch mentioned Archimedes' creation of a planetarium, a mechanical device that reproduced the movements of celestial bodies. Cicero, who saw this device in Rome, admired its complexity and precision. The planetarium contained a system of bronze gears and could predict solar and lunar eclipses. This technology predated the Antikythera mechanism by 2 centuries, but no trace of Archimedes' device has been found. A special place among the lost inventions belonged to the siege engines created for the defense of Syracuse. Polybius described giant cranes capable of lifting enemy ships out of the water and smashing them against the rocks. Other sources mention catapults with automatic reloading and mobile turrets for bombarding besiegers. These mechanisms demonstrated the use of complex lever systems and counterweights. Archimedes' mathematical works have been partially preserved in later copies, but many practical applications of his discoveries have been lost. His method for determining the volumes of solids of revolution could have been used for the precise calculation of ship hulls and architectural structures. His works on fluid mechanics contain principles that allowed for the creation of efficient hydraulic systems for urban water supply and irrigation. The Library of Alexandria contained the complete works of Archimedes, including technical drawings and detailed descriptions of mechanisms. The gradual destruction of the library from the 4th to the 7th centuries CE led to the irretrievable loss of many unique documents. 9th century Arabic translators preserved only the mathematical treatises, ignoring practical inventions as unimportant. Some of Archimedes' technologies could have been reconstructed during the Renaissance, when European scholars showed interest in ancient mechanics. Leonardo da Vinci studied fragmentary descriptions of Archimedes' machines and attempted to reconstruct their operating principles. However, the lack of original drawings made such attempts largely speculative. Modern historians of technology suggest that some of Archimedes' inventions may have been centuries ahead of their time. The use of gears, differential mechanisms, and automatic control systems demonstrates a profound understanding of engineering principles. The loss of this knowledge slowed human technological progress, delaying the rediscovery of many mechanisms for centuries into the future. Perhaps fragments of brilliant inventions capable of changing our understanding of the capabilities of ancient civilization still lurk among the ruins of ancient cities. Mesopotamian saws made of petrified wood represent one of the most enigmatic technological anomalies of the ancient world, discovered by British archaeologists in the early 20th century in what is now Iraq. These tools, made of mineralized wood with flint teeth, demonstrated a level of material processing considered impossible by modern science for Bronze Age civilizations. After initial study, the artifacts disappeared amidst the chaos of political upheaval in the Middle East. The finds were made by Leonard Woolley's expedition in the region of ancient Ur between 1922 and 1934. In layers dating to the 3rd millennium BC, archaeologists discovered a workshop containing unusual tools. In addition to traditional bronze tools, they also found saws with blades made of petrified wood, the edges of which were studded with microscopic, geometrically shaped flint teeth. Petrographic analysis revealed that the tools were made from wood fragments that had undergone natural mineralization over millions of years. The fossilization process replaced the organic fibers with quartz and chalcedony, creating an extremely hard material. Most astonishing, however, was the ability of ancient craftsmen to craft this fossil, creating perfectly straight cutting edges and a precisely calibrated tooth system. The saw teeth had a complex, asymmetrical shape, optimized for cutting in one direction. The sharpening angle and the spacing between the teeth varied depending on the intended material. Some saws were designed for cutting soft stone, others for sawing metal. Manufacturing precision met modern industrial standards. Traces of abrasive powders and polishing compounds used to process petrified wood were discovered in the same workshop. Chemical analysis revealed the presence of corundum and diamond dust, materials that, according to official history, were only used in stone processing in the Middle Ages. The sources of these abrasives in Mesopotamia in the 3rd millennium BC remain a mystery. Functional tests demonstrated the exceptional efficiency of these ancient tools. Fossilized saws easily cut granite and basalt, which bronze tools of the era struggled to handle. The flint teeth retained their sharpness, significantly longer than their metal counterparts, and did not require frequent resharpening. These properties made the tools indispensable for the precise processing of hard materials. Woolley meticulously documented the finds and prepared detailed reports for the British Museum. The most valuable specimens were packed for shipment to London, but the outbreak of World War II disrupted the expedition's plans. The boxes containing the artifacts remained in a warehouse at the Baghdad Archaeological Museum, where their trail was lost among thousands of other objects. Post-war attempts to locate fossilized saws in museum collections proved unsuccessful. Iraqi authorities claimed such artifacts had never entered their collections. Archival documents from Woolley's expedition contained descriptions and photographs of the tools, but the objects themselves had disappeared. They may have been sold on the black market or taken by private collectors. Modern attempts to replicate the technology for processing petrified wood face significant challenges. Despite the development of diamond tools and precision equipment, creating such fine and precise teeth remains a complex task. The secrets of Mesopotamian craftsmen, which allowed them to process fossils using primitive methods, are likely lost forever. The disappearance of these unique artifacts has deprived modern science of the opportunity to solve one of the greatest technological mysteries of antiquity. Perhaps fragments of Mesopotamian saws, capable of shedding light on previously unknown chapters of the history of human ingenuity, still exist somewhere in private collections. The Inca gold of Cusco vanished in the fires of the Spanish conquest, leaving only legends of countless treasures hidden in the secret refuges of the Andes. When Francisco Pizarro's conquistadors entered the empire's sacred capital, Tahuantinsuyu, in 1533, they discovered gold decorations in temples and palaces that surpassed anything Europeans could have imagined. However, most of these treasures never fell into the hands of the conquerors. Cusco, meaning navel of the earth in Quechua, served as the religious and administrative center of the greatest empire in pre-Columbian America. The main temple, the Coricancha, was entirely covered in finger-thick gold leaf. The walls glittered with the yellow metal, and the central sanctuary housed a golden disc symbolizing the sun, god, Inti. The sacred garden surrounding the temple contained life-size golden statues of llamas, trees, and flowers. Spanish chronicles preserved astonishing descriptions of Cusco's riches. Pedro Sancho de la Hoz wrote of golden thrones weighing over 200 kilograms each, and statues of rulers made of pure metal. The Inca palace contained gold plate for hundreds of courtiers, and royal mummies were adorned with diadems of emeralds and gold feathers. The total value of the treasures was estimated by contemporaries at millions of pesos. The Incas did not regard gold as a medium of exchange, but rather attached it exclusively to religious significance. The yellow metal was considered the sweat of the sun god, and silver the tears of the moon goddess. Mining took place in sacred mines under the strict supervision of priests, and its processing was entrusted only to select artisans. Each piece was created for a specific ritual or ceremony, linking the material world with the divine. Atahualpa's capture in Cajamarca in November 1532 reached Cusco via the Chasqui system of messengers. Priests and military leaders immediately began evacuating the most valuable objects from the temples and palaces. Golden statues were dismantled, sacred discs were removed from the walls, and ritual utensils were packed into lamadas, traditional woven bags. Caravans of llamas carrying treasures set off in various directions along mountain trails, known only to the initiated. Some of the gold was hidden in the caves of sacred mountains, others in secret chambers of temples in remote provinces. The most valuable objects associated with ancestor worship were transported to the inaccessible regions of Antisuyu, the eastern part of the empire, covered in impenetrable jungle. When the Spaniards reached Cusco in November 1533, they discovered only a fraction of the expected riches. The Coricancha had been partially looted by the inhabitants themselves, and many palaces stood empty. The conquistadors seized approximately 24 tons of gold, but this amount did not match the descriptions of the Inca capital's countless treasures. Torture and interrogation of local nobles failed to produce the expected results. The Incas preferred death to betraying sacred secrets. Only a few minor caches were discovered by the Spaniards in the first decades after the conquest. The bulk of the hidden gold remained in the mountains, guarded by the silence of the last guardians of ancient traditions. The search for Cusco's treasure continued for centuries. Spanish colonial authorities organized regular expeditions into the Andes, using native guides and archival documents. In the 18th century, Jesuits compiled maps of suspected gold locations based on the testimony of converted Indians. However, systematic searches yielded no significant results. In the 19th and 20th centuries, the Republican governments of Peru and Bolivia issued numerous concessions to search for Incan treasures. Modern treasure hunters use metal detectors and satellite imagery, but Andean glaciers and rock slides reliably conceal ancient caches. Perhaps the gold of Cusco still rests in mountain caves, awaiting the day when the descendants of the Incas deem it possible to reveal their ancestors' legacy to the world. Atlantean artifacts and their possible traces remain one of the most controversial topics in archaeology, balancing on the line between scientific inquiry and pseudo-historical speculation. Plato's description of the sunken continent in the dialogues Timaeus and Critias, written in the 4th century BC, sparked a centuries-long search for material evidence of an advanced civilization that vanished 9,000 years before the time of the Athenian philosopher. Several 20th century archaeological finds have indeed exhibited anomalous characteristics, but their connection to the legendary Atlantis remains unproven. Plato described Atlantis as a maritime power larger than Libya and Asia combined. The capital was located on an island 50 stades in diameter, surrounded by concentric canals and earthen ramparts. The central temple of Poseidon was clad in silver, gold, and orichalcum, a mysterious metal that modern researchers identify as brass or a copper-zinc alloy. The Atlanteans possessed a sophisticated navy and advanced technology. The most intriguing discoveries were made in the Atlantic Ocean near the Bahamas in 1968. Pilot Robert Brush discovered geometrically perfect stone structures from the air in shallow waters off Bimini Island. Underwater exploration revealed megalithic blocks forming a semblance of a road or foundation, approximately 700 meters long. The stones were carefully fitted together without the use of mortar. Geological analysis of Bimini Road revealed that the structure was composed of blocks of beach limestone formed approximately 15,000 years ago. Some of the stones weighed up to 25 tons and showed signs of artificial processing. Skeptics attributed the discovery to natural geological processes, but Atlantis theorists saw it as evidence of an ancient civilization. In 2001, Canadian researchers discovered structures at a depth of 700 meters in the waters off Cuba that resembled the ruins of urban buildings. Sonar scanning revealed regular geometric shapes, pyramids, platforms, and rectangular buildings. Some structures reached several hundred meters in length. However, the extreme depth made detailed study extremely expensive. Mediterranean archaeologists have also hypothesized a connection between the Minoan civilization of Crete and Plato's Atlantis. The eruption of the Santorini volcano in the 15th century BC destroyed a developed culture possessing advanced maritime and metallurgical technologies. The Palace of Knossos contained complex plumbing systems, and Minoan frescoes depicted religious ceremonies with bulls, a detail present in Plato's description. Of particular interest were the discoveries in the Black Sea, where Russian oceanographers discovered traces of ancient settlements submerged after rising sea levels in the 7th millennium BC. These structures were located at depths of up to 100 meters and contained the remains of wooden structures, ceramics, and stone tools. The age of the finds corresponded to the time of advanced Neolithic cultures. The most enigmatic discovery was a metal disc recovered by Portuguese fishermen near the Azores in 1974. The object, approximately 30 centimeters in diameter, was made of an alloy containing rare metals in unusual proportions. Its surface was covered in symbols that did not correspond to any known writing system. Radiocarbon dating of the organic inclusions indicated an age of approximately 10,000 years. The disc disappeared from the Portuguese Maritime Museum in the 1980s under mysterious circumstances. Officials attributed the loss to a cataloging error, but copies of the photographs continued to circulate among researchers of anomalous archaeological finds. Some experts speculated that the artifact was seized at the request of international organizations seeking to conceal evidence of prehistoric civilizations. Modern academic archaeology views the search for Atlantis with deep skepticism, viewing Plato's account as a philosophical allegory rather than historical evidence. Nevertheless, mysterious underwater structures and anomalous artifacts continue to be explained within the framework of conventional science, leaving room for various interpretations and hypotheses about forgotten chapters of human history. Lemurian stone tablets were allegedly discovered by British geologists in the Indian Ocean in the late 19th century, when the scientific community was actively debating the hypothesis of a sunken continent between India and Madagascar. This theoretical landmass, named after the lemurs of Madagascar, was supposed to explain the similarities in flora and fauna between the territories separated by the ocean. The few artifacts attributed to the Lemurian civilization disappeared from scientific circulation after geological theories were revised in the 20th century. The Lemuria hypothesis was proposed by the English zoologist Philip Sclater in 1864 to explain the distribution of fossil lemurs in India and Madagascar, but their absence from Africa and the Middle East. The German biologist Ernst Haeckel supported this idea, suggesting that Lemuria could have been the ancestral home of humanity. Geologists of the time considered the possibility of land bridges periodically connecting the continents. In 1887, a Royal Geographical Society expedition, led by Captain James MacDonald, explored underwater elevations near the Maldives. Dredging the seabed from a depth of approximately 200 meters yielded fragments of artificially processed rocks. Some samples contained regular depressions resembling written symbols or symbolic images. Petrographic analysis revealed that the stones were composed of granite, a type uncommon in the coral atolls of the Maldives. The nearest outcrops of similar rocks were in the Seychelles, 800 kilometers to the south, or on the Indian subcontinent. This discrepancy supported the hypothesis that the fragments originated from eroded coastal formations of a sunken landmass. The most interesting specimen was a flat basalt slab measuring 30 by 20 centimeters, covered in rows of tiny symbols. The symbols were carved with a sharp instrument to a depth of 2 to 3 millimeters and filled with mineral deposits, indicating prolonged submersion. The writing style did not correspond to any known system, including the ancient Indian and Dravidian alphabets. Dr. Alexander Cunningham, director of the Archaeological Survey of India, received photographs of the tablets for examination. His preliminary conclusion indicated a possible connection between the symbols and the Proto-Indian script of the Indus Valley civilization. However, the lack of archaeological context made dating and interpretation extremely difficult. Cunningham recommended continuing the search for similar artifacts. MacDonald's collection arrived at the Natural History Museum in London, where it was displayed in a hall of geological curiosities. Public interest in the finds was low, as the scientific community focused on more obvious archaeological discoveries in Egypt and Mesopotamia. The stone fragments from the Indian Ocean were viewed as curiosities, not worthy of serious study. The situation changed in the 20th century with the development of plate tectonics. New geological data revealed that the Indian Ocean never contained large continental masses capable of supporting an advanced civilization. The Lemurian hypothesis was dismissed as scientifically untenable. Consequently, interest in artifacts associated with it completely disappeared. During a reorganization of museum holdings in the 1950s, the Lemurian tablet collection was transferred to storage and then removed from the catalogs. The official explanation for this decision was a reassessment of the exhibit's scientific value in light of new geological theories. However, some researchers have suggested that the artifacts were removed for reasons unrelated to their authenticity. Attempts by modern enthusiasts to locate Lemurian tablets in the archives of British museums have been unsuccessful. Administrative records contain contradictory information about the fate of the MacDonald collection. It's possible the stone fragments were donated to private collections or destroyed as having no scientific value. Thus disappeared the last material traces of a hypothetical civilization whose existence modern science considers impossible. Artifacts from the continent of Mu became the subject of pseudo-archaeological research after the publication of the works of British Colonel James Churchward in the early 20th century. Churchward claimed to have discovered ancient tablets in Tibet, describing an advanced Pacific civilization that perished 12,000 years ago as a result of a catastrophic earthquake. Several artifacts from the Polynesian islands and the American coast were interpreted as possible traces of this hypothetical culture, but subsequently disappeared from scientific circulation. The continent of Mu, according to Churchward's theory, stretched from Hawaii to Easter Island and from the Marquesas Islands to Fiji, This gigantic landmass was supposedly inhabited by a highly advanced civilization that mastered the secrets of aviation, atomic energy, and telepathic communication. The capital was located in the area of today's Tuamotu archipelago, and the population exceeded 64 million. The inhabitants of Mu established colonies in Egypt, India, and Central America. The most famous artifact attributed to the Mu civilization was a 30-centimeter diameter golden disc discovered by Mexican archaeologist José López in the ruins of the Mayan city of Palenque in 1923. The object contained spiral patterns and symbols that did not correspond to classical Mayan iconography. The central portion of the disc was decorated with an image of a sun with radiating rays, surrounded by wavy lines symbolizing water. Chemical analysis of the gold disc revealed an unusual alloy composition with high levels of platinum and iridium, metals rarely used by pre-Columbian American civilizations. The manufacturing technique involved high-temperature smelting, exceeding the capabilities of traditional Mayan metallurgy. These features have intrigued proponents of theories of ancient astronauts and lost civilizations. In Polynesia, the French ethnographer Pierre Lacroix collected a collection of stone tablets from the island of Nuku Hiva in the Marquesas archipelago. Locals called them ancestral texts and claimed that the symbols described the history of a great land that had sunk beneath the sea. The writing system did not correspond to known Polynesian systems, including the Rongorongo of Easter Island. Some signs resembled Indus Valley hieroglyphs, or the Cretan linear script. Radiocarbon dating of organic inclusions in the stone tablets indicated an age of approximately 3,000 years, coinciding with the period of Polynesian colonization of the Pacific Ocean. However, the stylistic features of the writing and the mythological themes of the images pointed to more ancient roots of the tradition. It is possible that the tablets were later copies of lost originals. A Yonaguni Formation, near Okinawa. These objects were recovered from a depth of 25 meters in the 1980s. The vessels were unusually shaped and decorated with geometric patterns uncharacteristic of traditional Japanese ceramics. The age of the pieces was estimated at 8,000 to 10,000 years. Clay analysis revealed that the pottery was made of a material not found in the modern Ryukyu Islands. The nearest similar clay deposits were located on the continental shelf, which was submerged at the end of the last ice age. This supported the hypothesis of the existence of an ancient landmass in the western Pacific Ocean. All of these artifacts gradually disappeared from public view in the late 20th century. The Palenque gold disc disappeared from the National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City during a reorganization of its exhibits. The Lo Croix Marquesan tablets were not donated to public collections by their heirs and remained in private hands. The Yonaguni ceramics were confiscated by Japanese customs as illegally obtained archaeological treasures. The modern scientific community rejects the existence of the continent of Mu based on geological data on the structure of the Pacific Ocean floor. Tectonic plates have never contained large continental masses in this region. Accordingly, artifacts attributed to the Mu civilization are considered either forgeries or misinterpretations of objects from known cultures. The disappearance of these controversial artifacts deprived researchers of the opportunity to conduct modern analysis using precise dating and material composition methods. While some of the objects may have been of genuine scientific interest, their connection to the hypothetical continent of Mu remains unproven and highly questionable. The disappearance of the Baghdad Museum's artifacts after 2003 represents one of the greatest cultural catastrophes of modern times, when the millennia-old legacy of Mesopotamian civilization was plundered in the chaos of war. The National Museum of Iraq contained a priceless collection of artifacts from the Sumerian city-states to the Abbasid Caliphate, many of which were unique testaments to ancient cultures. The exact number of missing objects remains unknown. The Iraq Museum was founded in 1926 by British archaeologists and quickly became one of the leading repositories of Middle Eastern antiquities. The collection was formed through systematic excavations at Ur, Babylon, Nineveh, Mari, and other iconic sites. The Archaeological Discoveries Act required all key artifacts to remain in Iraq, leading to a concentration of unique items in the Baghdad collection. The most valuable exhibits were considered gold jewelry from the royal tombs of Ur, dating back to the 3rd millennium BC. The collection included diadems of Queen Puabi, gold warrior helmets, and ceremonial daggers with lapis lazuli handles. Assyrian reliefs from the palaces of Nineveh and Khorsabad demonstrated the supreme skill of ancient sculptors. Babylonian mathematical tablets contained unique texts on astronomy and algebra. Of particular scientific value was the library of cuneiform tablets, numbering over 100,000 documents. Among them were administrative archives from Sumerian temples, literary works in the Akkadian language, and legal codes. The Epic of Gilgamesh was presented in several versions, including fragments unknown in other collections. Medical and magical texts shed light on the daily life of ancient Mesopotamia. In anticipation of the military operation in 2003, museum staff took measures to protect the collection. The most valuable items were moved to the underground vaults of the Central Bank of Iraq, equipped with modern security systems. Large stone sculptures were covered with sand and protective screens. However, a significant portion of the exhibits remained in the museum halls due to the time and transportation constraints. On April 9 and 10, 2003, the museum was systematically looted. The thieves demonstrated a keen knowledge of the collection, deliberately removing the most valuable items. Display cases containing gold jewelry were broken into, and cylinder seals and precious metal figurines were stolen. Thousands of cuneiform tablets disappeared, including unique historical documents. A subsequent inventory revealed the loss of approximately 15,000 items, although the exact figures varied among sources. Among the lost artifacts were a sacred vessel from Uruk, dating back to the 4th millennium BC, a copperhead of an Akkadian ruler, and a marble mask of a woman from Uruk. The library lost thousands of cuneiform documents, many of which contained untranslated texts. International efforts to recover stolen artifacts have yielded limited results. U.S. military authorities launched an operation to intercept shipments of antiquities at Iraq's borders. Interpol added the stolen items to its international database of missing cultural property. Several hundred artifacts were returned through auction houses and private collectors. However, most of the missing items disappeared into the international antiques trade. Cuneiform tablets appeared at auctions in London and New York, disguised as items from old collections. Gold jewelry was refished or dismantled to conceal its origin. Many artifacts ended up in private collections, whose owners preferred to keep their acquisitions under wraps. The loss of scientific documentation was particularly painful. Along with the objects, excavation archives, photographs, and descriptions of the finds disappeared. Many artifacts lost their archaeological context, significantly reducing their scientific value. Research projects based on museum materials were interrupted for decades. 20 years later, the Baghdad collection remains incomplete. The museum has partially reopened, but many rooms remain empty. The lost treasures of Mesopotamia may never return to their homeland, remaining forever scattered among private collections and the black market for antiques, a reminder of the fragility of human cultural heritage in the face of war and political upheaval. The Vatican's secret collections represent one of the largest concentrations of historical artifacts in the world, many of which have remained inaccessible to independent researchers for centuries. The Apostolic Library and Secret Archives of the Holy See contain approximately 80,000 manuscripts, 1.5 million books, and countless documents spanning 2,000 years of Christian history. In addition to written sources, the Vatican's repositories conceal archaeological finds, works of art, and religious relics of inestimable scientific value. The history of the Vatican collections dates back to the 4th century, when Emperor Constantine the Great donated significant material resources to the Christian Church. Popes systematically collected manuscripts, saving them from barbarian invasions and iconoclastic movements. In the Middle Ages, monastic scriptoria throughout Europe sent copies of the most important texts to Rome. The Renaissance brought active archaeological research and the acquisition of ancient monuments. The officially accessible portion of the Vatican's holdings constitutes only a small fraction of the total collection. Researchers can obtain permission to study certain documents, but the selection process is extremely strict. Many sections of the archives are chronologically closed. Documents less than 75 years old are inaccessible for study. Some holdings are classified for reasons of diplomatic confidentiality or religious sensitivity. The Vatican's archaeological collection was formed through excavations in Roman catacombs, basilicas, and on the Vatican Hill itself. In the 16th century, fragments of the Constantinian Basilica of St. Peter's were discovered, including parts of the altar and mosaic floors. Underground excavations revealed a pagan necropolis dating from the 1st to 3rd centuries with unique frescoes and inscriptions. Many of the finds have never been published and are kept in closed depositories. Of particular interest are relics whose origins are shrouded in mystery. The Vatican treasuries contain objects traditionally associated with Christ and the Apostles, but their authenticity has never been independently verified. These include fragments of the cross, the crown of thorns, the shroud of Turin, and numerous other artifacts revered by believers as authentic testimonies to the events of the Gospels. The library's collections contain unique manuscripts, the existence of which is known only from catalogs. The Codex Vaticanus, one of the oldest copies of the Bible from the 4th century, was long inaccessible for full study. Palimpsests, parchments with erased and rewritten texts, may conceal lost works of ancient literature. Modern multispectral imaging techniques could allow the restoration of erased texts, but access to such research is extremely limited. The secret archives contain diplomatic correspondence between popes and rulers of all eras, documents from the Inquisition, trials against heretics and witches, and negotiations with Protestant churches, all remain classified or only partially accessible. Materials on the history of Christianization in the Americas, Asia, and Africa could shed light on little-known cultural contacts, but most such documents are inaccessible to researchers. In the 20th century, the Vatican collections were enriched with archaeological finds from various regions of the world. The Catholic Church's missionary work contributed to the accumulation of artifacts from Latin America, China, India, and Africa. Many objects were donated by local communities or acquired through charitable activities. The scientific value of these collections remains unknown due to the lack of public access. Modern technology offers new opportunities for studying Vatican treasures, but church authorities remain cautious about independent research. Radiocarbon dating, X-ray photography, spectral analysis, and other methods could provide precise data on the age and origin of the disputed artifacts. However, such research is conducted exclusively by Vatican scientists under strict administration oversight. The question of fully opening the Vatican archives is periodically raised by historians and public figures. Opponents of secrecy cite the scholarly value of hidden documents and humanity's right to know its history. Church authorities emphasize the need to protect confidential information and gradually open the materials as they are studied by internal specialists. The Vatican's secret collections remain one of the last great mysteries in the field of historical heritage preservation. Perhaps hidden within their depths are discoveries that could change our understanding of the past, but access to these treasures of knowledge remains the preserve of a small circle of initiates, leaving humanity in the dark about a significant part of its own history.